Chapter 7. It's all about winning. As I stated early on, even though much of my original manuscript has remained intact, certain things had to be revisited. God, my father, turned my life upside down, changed me at the very core of my soul. Looking back now, it saddened me to see the person that I was and how I chose to live my life. I tell my kids this on a daily basis. If I knew then what I know now, my life would have been so much simpler. I didn't. But I do believe that I had to take that journey to my final ending and his beginning. God was there from the first step. I just chose to ignore him. I wake up every morning thanking God for allowing me, after more than 40 years, to allow me to take over my entire life, mentally, physically, spiritually, and emotionally. Every ounce of Vince Russo belongs to him. Unfortunately, for you to fully understand that transition, I need to talk in detail about the old Vince. For me, it had everything to do with winning and losing, and nothing to do with how you played the game. I've always wondered who really believes it's how you play the game. I'll tell you who. Losers. It was all about winning. Nothing else mattered. The more you won, the stronger you became. The more you failed, the less you were. Sound heartless? It was. And so was I. But at the time, I was being truthful. I remember my father asking me, "Vin, don't you have any compassion in your heart?" Well, if I did, I certainly never let it out for air. To me, it was always about the truth. Telling it, living it, no matter how much it may have hurt others. And then this part of the story here. This is what, if you followed along with us, this is where the text changes a little bit. And this is where he goes back and starts to update some of the text. Because at the beginning of chapter 1, he explains that he originally wrote the manuscript and lit everybody up. And then he went back years later and he rewrote some, or he added some, he an addendum to some of his content, to his book itself. So he writes, "I was clueless to the fact that at this point in my life, the real truth was light years away. My motto was, if you weren't man enough to tell the truth 100% of the time, then you never be true to yourself. Whereas there might be some meat to that wisdom, I now understand that the truth at that time may not have been the truth at all, but rather the way I looked at the world. Back then, I never looked at it losing as a way of growing. Today, I do. I had to lose the battle, my battle, and face the reality of I'm not in order to understand and accept the fullness of the Lord's I am. I also now understand that maybe a loss isn't a loss at all, but rather, again, the truth is that sometimes things don't turn out the way we plan. That wasn't God's plan. You see the difference? I'm now certain that I was confusing truth with honesty at the time. Why? Because I saw my opinion as the truth. Today, I consider that ridiculous. When I stated, if you aren't man enough to tell the truth 100% of the time, I understand now that I should have said, if you aren't honest with yourself 100% of the time. It was, and still is, important for me to look myself in the mirror, regardless of what I might see. At the end of the day, you have to be able to live with yourself. There have been times in my life when I absolutely buried myself by being honest. But you know what? I can look in that mirror. I can look my children in the eye and know that I did the right thing. All right, he continues on back in the original text. Unfortunately, I can't say the same thing about a lot of individuals I encountered in the wrestling business. But I do understand that it's just the nature of the beast. I'm not condoning it by any means. It's just the way the business was built. You see, from one day, the wrestling business was controlled by promoters who were interested in only one thing, making all the money. As a result, they never hired any of the wrestlers, providing them with health care, dental care, insurance, death benefits, that kind of thing. Instead, they gave them jobs as independent contractors, which to me means you can work any place. But the catch was you never could. What the promoters created was a wrestler eat wrestler world. Everybody was in competition to get that illustrious spot. So with the boys, it was always about doing whatever you had to do to keep your spot. That meant lying, cheating, stealing, hurting, and lying some more. That's what the majority of the wrestlers I've known are sick with that's why the majority of the wrestlers I've known are sick with paranoia. They're always looking in the rearview mirror to see who might be serving them up for lunch. That's what the wrestling business was built on, and it's still fueled by today. I've always said it's tough to be a regular guy and exist in the wrestling business. But I had to be honest for the sake of my own self-respect. If you don't respect yourself, you will respect no one. That's the one thing I can say for Vince McMahon. The guy never lied to me. He may have been insensitive at times, but he never lied. That's why I always had such great respect for him. He said things to me even when they hurt. Perhaps he would not be truthful 100% of the time. I'm talking about man to man. 100% of the time for business reasons, dollars and cents. But I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about man to man. When it's all on the line, looking another human being in the eye and shooting straight. Any heat that I had or have with any of the boys, the wrestlers, today is for that reason alone. I was always honest with them. And on occasion, that was not always what they wanted to hear. But guess what? I can live with that. I'd rather somebody be hot with me over the truth than over a lie. And then Vince Russo adds another amendum here. Just for the record, back in the day, I didn't always practice what I preached. I didn't win all the time. The truth is, during my wrestling career, I lost on several occasions. As a matter of fact, there were many times when I was done by the politics of the business. But on every occasion, I knew exactly what was going on. All I had to do was glance over my shoulder and see the huddles and corners quickly breaking up. I got it, especially in World Championship Wrestling. But my mindset was that I was getting paid to do a job, so I was going to do the best job I could. I made it my policy to never get caught up in the politics because I just wasn't interested. If politics were going to be my downfall, then it just wasn't meant to be in the first place. Again, with God now clearly running my life, I understood that he always looked after my best interest. It was in my best interest to leave my position with WCW just 3 months in, fully realizing that I could be breaching my lucrative contract. And everything turned out okay. I can look at my children and know that one day they will be able to appreciate their old man stood tall and stuck to his God-given values regardless of the circumstances. In the end, when the last fan leaves the arena, all you're going to have is yourself. At that point, you're either going to be able to live with yourself or not. It will all depend on how you choose to live your life, by your rules or by God's. All right, back to the original text that he wrote. I want to make one thing clear. When I talk about winning, I'm not talking about winning a game. In life, you play a lot of games. You're going to win some and you're going to lose some. It's the law of averages. When I was 13, my team won the Little League World Series. When I was 14, we lost it. No big deal. What I'm talking about are the big battles, the ones that really make a difference in your life, the ones you can't afford to lose. I won my first big battle when I was about 17 years old. It was on a battlefield that every guy knows. Dating a girl who thinks she's better than you and trying to humble her. Her name was, I'll use the initial in effort to not get sued for defamation of character again. And for one day she took, her name was L, I'm sorry. And for one day she took the position that I was just lucky to be going out with her. And you know what? At that time, she was probably right. She was the high maintenance, popular princess. I was unsocial, introverted, and couldn't be bothered. From the first day we met, everything was a head game. She'd call, she wouldn't call. She's nice, she's witchy poo. All right, my second reference to HR Puff and stuff. You know the routine. As guys, we all go through it at some point. Well, call me a glutton for punishment, but I got into the game. It became an intriguing battle of who's going to zoom who first. Don't misunderstand me. I truly believed I was in love with Elle, but the fact was I dug her because she was the female equivalent of me. So the game grew more intense with each date. Neither side was going to lose. This was the ultimate Batman-Superman showdown to end all feuds. And you know what? Looking back now, the whole situation was whacked. I mean, we really did care for each other, but the win was most important thing for both sides. Sometime during the school year, Elle beat me to the punch. She broke up with me. I'll never forget it. I drove away from her house, my eyes leaking on the steering wheel of my 73 Camaro as the words of Elvis Costello's Allison blared from my 8-track. I'll never forget Elle's cocky last words intending to hurt me when she said, "Vinny, there will be me and you, but there will never be a me and you." Elle was the first and last girl I cried over. But as heartbroken as I was, I realized that the game had just begun. In my mind, there had to be a loser before there could be a winner. So for months that followed, I began to play a masterful game of chess. The spacing of phone calls, the accidental meetings, the occasional cards, all carried out with precision timing. On one occasion, I even tied a stray dog to her car, one of those shaggy canines, and left my calling card, a Gene Simmons trading card, attached to his collar just to get Hill's attention. Man, what was I thinking? When I was a teenager, Gene Simmons of Kiss was my god and savior. I bought my first Kiss album, Rock and Roll Over, on my 16th birthday, and from that day forward, my life would forever be changed. Those teenage years, I looked up to Simmons. I drew inspiration from him. Above my bed, I had this poster of the God of Thunder. looking up from his platform, dragging boots. That particular photo was just so powerful. I looked at it every night, drawing strength, thinking there wasn't anything I couldn't do. Again, here's something else I promised you will never read in any other ego-driven wrestling book. The first time I saw Kiss at Madison Square Garden in 1977 with my friend Brian Shakidra, I cried. You know, like when teeny boppers go to see Justin Timberlake? Yeah, I cried. Not afraid to admit it. That's how much Gene Simmons meant to me. Vince adds, I remained loyal to Gene Simmons and Kiss into adulthood and even passed the tradition along to my two boys. As a matter of fact, they were with me the night I got to meet the demon himself. That's right. For as bad as an experience at WCW was, one thing good came out of it. I had the opportunity to meet Gene Simmons. My boyhood dream became a reality. A couple of years later, at the age of 42, the one and only true idol made himself known to me, that being Jesus Christ himself. Looking back at my boyhood idol, I was so far gone to the other team that it was scary. No, I don't believe Gene Simmons is a devil worshiper, or a knight in Satan's service, but I do believe that it was dangerous for me at such an impressionable age to be looking up to someone whose values and beliefs were a bit tainted. Over the years, Gene Simmons has made it abruptly clear to anyone who will listen to him, it's all about women and money. Hey, whatever floats your boat. But with Christ running my life, it's so clear to me that those two things mean zero. I found out firsthand that money doesn't bring happiness. In my best year at WCW, I made $535,000, and I was miserable every minute that I earned it. I've said it once, and I'll say it again. The only difference between me making $500,000 a year or $50,000 a year was the amount of DVDs I bought. That's it. And let's face it, how many DVDs do we buy that we really don't need anyway? How many times do you have to watch Rocky before it gets old? Okay, maybe that's a bad example. Substitute Ernest Goes to Camp. All kidding aside, money does make you happy. Part of being a Christian is understanding that your money isn't your money at all. It belongs to the one who created you, God. Without God, you will have nothing. The treasures you have on the earth are given to you by God, and they are given for one reason, for God to see how you manage them. How you manage your earthly gifts here will determine what gifts you will be given when it matters, in eternity. So I'm not dissuading anybody from making as much as they want. I'm just advising you that your riches may be a test. Whether you pass or fail is totally up to you. But remember one thing, you exit this world the same way you entered, with nothing. As far as women go, look, I had a pretty powerful spot in the wrestling business, and there were and are many a female looking to break in, willing to do anything for it. You do the math. Again, my question is, do the nasty and you achieve what? You have good stories to tell the rest of the band or the locker room? Meanwhile, you've degraded your body, which isn't yours, by the way, it's God's temple, and you violated another human being. Just tell me, what has been accomplished? Thanks, but no thanks. I'm content being with the love of my life for more than 20 years and enjoying the fruits of the relationship, Will, VJ, and Annie. All right, back to his original writing. Finally, days before I was to leave for college, I won Elle back. She knew she couldn't live without me once I was 1,000 miles away. Elle told me what a mistake she had made, and how she truly loved me. Without blinking, I looked Elle in the eye and said, there's no way I'm going to be committed to you when I'm 1,000 miles away. In other words, here it comes. This will be me and you, but there won't be a me and you. Man, what a rush. What an accomplishment. What a win. It just felt so good. The point? At that moment, I had learned an extremely valuable lesson. You can get anything you want in the world as long as you work for it. Nothing is out of reach. Not getting the girl, not meeting Gene Simmons, and not even working side by side with Mr. McMahon. And then finally, to wrap up this chapter, it pains me, dear God, it's a letter to God, he writes, Dear God, it pains me deeply when I see the kind of person I was before I surrendered to you. To think that it was I who accomplished this and I who accomplished that makes me realize how lost I was without you. Since you saved my life, I truly understand that everything that's happened to me in this life has been your will. The highs and the lows were all by your design. For more than 40 years, I never saw the road I was walking until you made it clear as a Colorado spring. Every circumstance, every instance, every experience, every step of the way was mapped out by you for one reason. It would lead me directly to the one who loves me the most. Father, I thank you for saving my life, forgiving my sins, never giving up on me, loving me unconditionally, and most of all, for your Son, Jesus Christ. Today and every day, I live my life to glorify yours, says Vince. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is chapter 7.